Welcome to a world of ancient civilizations, where time intertwines with legend, and the grandeur of the past comes alive in silence. Imagine a land where majestic pyramids touch the sky, and cities shrouded in jungles hold the secrets of millennia. How could such complex and advanced societies have arisen so far from the known centers of civilization, in the heart of America? What knowledge and wisdom did they leave us? Today, we'll journey through the centuries to explore the enigmatic cultures of Mesoamerica and the Andes. We'll see how powerful states emerged from humble settlements, how science and art flourished, and how, like stars, once bright empires faded. Our conversation will be filled with stories of the Maya, Aztecs, and Incas, peoples whose achievements stagger the imagination and whose legacy continues to inspire. We'll explore the origins of their civilizations, their golden ages, their unique achievements in astronomy, mathematics, and architecture. We'll also touch on the reasons for their decline, reflecting on the lessons they taught us, the people of the 21st century. This journey is meant not only to enlighten, but also to soothe. We will speak of great achievements, the wisdom of our ancestors, and the rhythm of history that flows through the centuries like a mighty river. There is no room for fuss or anxiety in this narrative. There is only a calm immersion in the past, where every detail, every fact, every date reveals a new facet of a wondrous world. We'll begin in the lands where one of the most intriguing civilizations emerged, the Maya. We'll trace their path from the first settlements, which arose around 2000 BCE, to the emergence of the first city-states, which flourished around 250 CE. This was a formative time, a time when the foundations of their unique culture were laid. We'll then delve into the classic Maya period, spanning from 250 to 900 CE. It was truly a golden age. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan became centers of power, culture, and scholarship. We'll learn about their complex political structure, the profound and multifaceted religion that permeated every aspect of their lives, and their art, which still captivates us with its beauty and artistry. But the Maya weren't just builders and artists. They were also outstanding scientists. We'll discuss their astonishing achievements in astronomy and how they observed the movements of celestial bodies with incredible precision. We'll pay special attention to their complex and precise calendar, which allowed them to track time with astonishing meticulousness. And, of course, we'll touch on their unique hieroglyphic writing system, which allowed them to preserve their knowledge and history for centuries to come. However, like many great civilizations, the Maya faced a period of decline. We will examine the causes that led to the disappearance, or rather, the transformation of their classic cities and the transition to the post-classic period. This will be a calm reflection on the laws of history and the fragility of even the most powerful empires. Our journey will then take us to other great peoples of the Americas. We will see how the Aztec civilization emerged from nomadic tribes that emerged around the 13th century AD to the emergence of a powerful empire by the 14th century, 1428. We will examine the Aztec Empire in detail, focusing on its heart, the city of Tenochtitlan. We will explore their social structure,
their economy, which was based on trade and agriculture, and their military organization, which allowed them to conquer such vast territories. Religion was an integral part of Aztec life. We'll discuss their pantheon of gods, their complex rituals, and, of course, the human sacrifices that played a crucial role in their beliefs. The tragic decline of the Aztec Empire was marked by the arrival of the Spanish. We'll examine the events of the conquest, which began in 1519 and ended in 1521, and the role played by Hernán Cortés. But our story doesn't end there. We'll travel to the Andes Mountains, where the Inca Empire was born.
We'll follow their journey from a small kingdom that emerged around the 12th century CE to the formation of a vast empire by 1438. We will witness the rise of the Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu. We will discuss their remarkable state organization, the vast road network that connected the most remote corners of the empire, and their astonishing architecture, the most striking example of which is the majestic Machu Picchu. We will also delve into Inca society, economy, and governance. We will learn about the Mita system, a unique form of labor service, and their religion, which was closely tied to nature and ancestor worship. Unfortunately, the Inca Empire also suffered a tragic fate.
We will examine the causes of their fall, including the Civil War and subsequent Spanish conquest, which began in 1532 and ended in 1572, as well as the role Francisco Pizarro played in these events. To conclude our journey, we will compare these three great civilizations, the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas. We will highlight their similarities and differences and evaluate their contributions to world history. What lessons can we learn from their rise and fall? What did they leave behind for us, their descendants? This will be a calm and thoughtful exploration, full of astonishing facts and profound reflections. We will conclude our conversation with a sense of the enduring secrets these forgotten empires hold and the lessons they continue to teach us, humans who walk the path of progress.
Prepare to be immersed in a world of history where every sound, every word brings you closer to peace and understanding. We begin our journey with the origins of one of Mesoamerica's most astonishing civilizations, the Maya. These people left an indelible mark on history, astonishing us with their achievements in astronomy, mathematics, art, and architecture. Today, we'll travel back in time to trace their path from humble early settlements to the formation of the first powerful city-states. The history of the Maya begins long before their cities became known to the world. Around 2000 BCE, the first settlements emerged in the fertile lands of modern-day Guatemala, Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. These early Maya led a sedentary lifestyle, practicing agriculture. Their staple crops were corn, beans, and squash, which still form the basis of the diet of many peoples in the region. They lived in small communities, in houses built of clay and straw, surrounded by fields. Their lives were closely linked to the cycles of nature, the rhythm of agricultural work, the rains, and the sun. Gradually, with technological advances and population growth, these settlements began to expand.
Around the first millennium BC, we see the emergence of larger settlements where the rudiments of a social hierarchy were already beginning to take shape. The first monumental structures appeared, although much more modest than those we see later. These were most likely ritual sites and the first temples, indicating the emergence of a complex religious system. By the beginning of the first millennium CE, that is, around the year 00, the Mayan civilization entered a new stage of its development. We are talking about the period commonly referred to as the formative or pre-classic period. It was during this time that the foundations of future great cities were laid. The first city-states emerged, where a clear division of labor, the presence of rulers, priests, and artisans can already be observed. One of the early centers where we see these trends manifest is El Mirador, located in Guatemala. Its heyday spanned roughly from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. El Mirador is striking for its gigantic pyramids and structures, such as the La Danta complex. These structures testify to a sophisticated labor organization and the ability to mobilize large numbers of people for construction. Life in such cities was already more complex. At the center of the city was a sacred precinct with temples and palaces where rulers and priests lived. Residential quarters and craft workshops were located around the precinct. People engaged not only in agriculture but also in trade, crafts, and religious ceremonies. During this period, the foundations of the Mayas' future greatness were formed, their unique writing and calendar. Although the complete decipherment of hieroglyphs remains to be seen, the first inscriptions appear, testifying to a desire to record events, the names of rulers, and their deeds. Religion also played an increasingly important role. A complex pantheon of gods emerged, associated with nature, the cosmos, and human life. Gradually, by the beginning of the Common Era, Mayan settlements became increasingly large and sophisticated. We witness the emergence of the first city-states, which would play a key role in the centuries to come. This was a formative time, a time when the foundations were laid that would allow the Mayan civilization to reach its peak. From simple farmers living in small villages, the Maya came a long way, becoming the creators of complex urban centers, possessing a unique culture and knowledge. This period, spanning approximately 2,000 years, paved the way for the golden age that would soon arrive. This period, spanning approximately 2,000 years, set the stage for the golden age that was soon to come. We now return to the classic period of Maya civilization, a time that lasted from 2500 to 900 AD. This was a truly golden age, a period of prosperity, when the great Maya cities reached their peak of power and splendor. Imagine majestic cities rising above the jungle, their stone pyramids and temples reaching toward the sky. One such outstanding center was Tikal, located in what is now Guatemala. Tikal was not just a city, but an entire state, centered on monumental temples, such as the Temple of the Great Jaguar, which reaches over 70 meters in height. Its population may have reached hundreds of thousands, making it one of the largest urban centers of its time in the world. Life here was vibrant. Religious ceremonies and state gatherings were held in the central plaza, surrounded by noble palaces, residential areas, and artisan workshops.
Another gem of the classic period was Palenque, renowned for its exquisite architecture and art. Here, in what is now Mexico, masterpieces such as the Temple of the Inscriptions were created, containing the tomb of the powerful ruler Pakal the Great. The city was renowned for its carved stones, frescoes, and sculptures, which still amaze with their beauty and artistry. Copan, located in what is now Honduras, was also one of the most important Mayan centers.
It was renowned for its monumental stele, adorned with intricate carvings, and its Acropolis, a vast complex of palaces and temples. Science and art flourished here, and the rulers of Copan left behind a rich legacy of inscriptions and images. The political structure of the Maya city-states was quite complex. Each city was governed by its own ruler, who was considered sacred and wielded enormous power. Maya rulers often bore the title Ahau, meaning Lord. They served as high priests, military commanders, and judges. Power was usually passed hereditarily, from father to son. However, as in other ancient societies, political life could be unstable, and city-states often waged war against each other, seeking to expand their influence or protect their borders.
Religion played a central role in Mayan life. They believed in a complex pantheon of gods, each responsible for specific aspects of nature and human life. The gods of the sun, rain, and corn were especially prominent. Religious ceremonies, including offerings and sometimes human sacrifices, were regularly held in temples and city squares. Priests wielded enormous influence, interpreting the will of the gods and presiding over rituals. Maya art during the classic period reached incredible heights. The architecture is striking in its scale and harmony. Artists and artisans created exquisite ceramics decorated with paintings, fine jewelry made of gold and jade, and magnificent frescoes depicting scenes from the lives of rulers, mythological scenes, and everyday life. These works of art not only decorated cities, but also served to convey information, glorify rulers, and express religious beliefs. Life in Mayan cities, though complex, had its own rhythm. Most of the population were farmers, growing corn, beans, and squash in the lands surrounding the cities. Artisans produced ceramics, textiles, tools, and luxury goods. Trade also played a vital role, linking various city-states and even distant regions. Markets offered a wide variety of goods, from foodstuffs to exotic feathers and obsidian. During this period, the Maya made colossal strides in the development of science and writing, which we'll discuss in more detail in the next section. But it's already clear that the classic period marked the pinnacle of their civilization, leaving behind a magnificent legacy that continues to fascinate and inspire us to this day. The Maya, as we have already seen, achieved incredible heights in art, architecture, and social organization. But their genius extended much further, encompassing the realms of science and writing. It was these achievements that allowed them to capture their vision of the world, understand its laws, and pass on their knowledge to future generations. One of the most astonishing areas of Mayan intelligence was astronomy. They observed the heavens with astonishing care and precision. The ancient Maya built special observatories, often located at the tops of pyramids, to gain the best view of the starry sky. They closely monitored the movements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars, recording their observations over centuries. These records formed the basis of their profound knowledge of celestial bodies. The Maya paid special attention to the sun, moon, and Venus. They knew that the sun rises and sets daily and understood its role in life on Earth. The moon's motion was no less important to them. They could predict its phases with great accuracy. But perhaps most fascinating to them was the motion of the planet Venus. The Maya knew of its complex orbit, that it appears in the sky as the morning and evening star, and were even able to calculate its synodic period, the time it takes Venus to return to the same position relative to the Sun, with astonishing accuracy for their time. This knowledge was more than just a scientific curiosity. It had enormous significance for their religious beliefs and agricultural practices. Based on their astronomical observations, the Maya developed an extremely complex and precise calendar system. It wasn't just a single device, but a whole system of interconnected cycles, each serving its own purpose. The most famous is the sacred calendar, or Tzolk'in, which consisted of 260 days. It was formed by combining 20 days with different names and 13 numbers. This calendar was used to predict fortunes and determine favorable days for rituals, wars, and other important events. Parallel to the Tzolk'in, there existed a civil calendar, or Hab, consisting of 365 days, very close to the length of the solar year. It was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 extra days considered unlucky and observed with special rituals. These two calendars, the Tzolk'in and the Hab, were synchronized, forming the so-called calendar circle, a cycle lasting 52 Hab years. When these cycles ended, the Maya celebrated it as the beginning of a new century with lavish celebrations. To track longer historical periods, the Maya used the so-called long count. This was a linear system of chronology, beginning with the mythical date of the creation of the world, which they believed to have occurred in 1311 BCE. The long count allowed them to record events over thousands of years, giving them a sense of deep historical continuity. Mayan writing is also one of the greatest achievements of the ancient world. They developed a complex hieroglyphic system, one of the few fully developed scripts in pre-Columbian America. These hieroglyphs were not simple pictograms. They were a mixture of logograms, signs representing entire words, and syllabograms, signs representing syllables. This allowed them to record not only names and events, but also convey more complex ideas and grammatical structures. Mayan hieroglyphs adorned the walls of temples, stelae, monumental stone sculptures, ceramic vessels, and the pages of their books, called codices. Unfortunately, most of these codices were destroyed by European conquerors, who considered them heretical. Only a few such books survive to this day, including the Dresden Codex, the Madrid Codex, and the Paris Codex. These rare documents are an invaluable source of information on Mayan mythology, astronomy, medicine, and history. Deciphering Mayan writing has become one of the most challenging tasks for modern scholars. Only in the mid-20th century, thanks to the work of researchers like Yuri Knorozov and subsequent advances by other scholars, was the meaning of these ancient symbols significantly understood. We can now read the inscriptions on stelae and codices, learning the names of rulers, the dates of their reigns, important historical events, and mythological stories. People's lives during this period, although centered around city-states, had their own rhythms linked to natural cycles and astronomical observations. Farmers, who made up the bulk of the population, relied on the Hab calendar for sowing and harvesting. The sacred Tzolk'in calendar, in turn, influenced their daily lives, determining when to perform certain rituals, when to expect a child's birth, and what the child's destiny would be. Scholars and priests, the keepers of knowledge, spent days and nights observing the sky, making calculations, and recording their discoveries. They were a kind of living computers of their time, capable of processing vast amounts of information. Their work was vital to the stability of society, as the well-being of the entire city-state depended on their predictions and rituals. Thus, the Mayas' achievements in astronomy, calendars, and writing demonstrate their remarkable intellectual potential. They not only lived in harmony with nature, but also sought to understand its laws, capture their knowledge, and transmit it. These achievements became the foundation of their civilization and left an indelible mark on human history. But, as often happens in history, even the most prosperous civilization faces trials, and the classic Maya period, the pinnacle of their development, was no exception. The reasons for their decline are still debated among scholars, but they are undoubtedly linked to a complex set of factors that led to the gradual decline of the once magnificent cities. The causes of the decline of the classic Maya are still debated among scholars, but they are undoubtedly linked to a complex set of factors that led to the gradual decline of these once magnificent cities. This was not a sudden event, but rather a slow decline that lasted for many decades, from approximately the 8th to the 10th centuries CE. Imagine how, for centuries, thriving cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan filled their plazas with people, and their temples and palaces served as centers of social and spiritual life. Suddenly, these places began to lose their population. People began to abandon these magnificent cities, leaving behind only magnificent ruins that we can only study today. One of the leading hypotheses is the depletion of natural resources. The Maya were skilled farmers, but their methods, based on slash-and-burn cultivation, could have led to soil degradation due to intensive land use. Sustaining a growing population required ever more food, and the lands around the cities may have ceased to yield sufficient crops. This could have led to famine and discontent among the population. Another important factor, scientists believe, was prolonged periods of drought. Climate change, possibly caused by natural cycles or human activity, could have led to water shortages, which were critical for agriculture in the region. Rivers dried up, reservoirs emptied, and life became increasingly difficult. Internal conflicts also cannot be ruled out.
The classic Maya period was characterized by the existence of numerous independent city-states, which, although sharing a common culture, often competed with each other for power and resources. Frequent warfare could have weakened cities, depleting their populations and economies, making them more vulnerable to other challenges. Some researchers also point to social and political factors. Perhaps the social structure, based on the power of rulers and priests, became too rigid and could not adapt to changing conditions. The increased tax burden on the peasantry to support the elite's luxurious lifestyle and the construction of monumental structures could have led to social unrest. It's important to understand that most likely none of these factors acted in isolation. Rather, it was a combination of all of them, which, overlapping, led to a gradual decline. It's like a chain reaction. Drought leads to crop failure. Crop failure leads to famine. Famine leads to social unrest, and wars between weakened cities accelerate their demise. With the decline of the classic cities, the center of Mayan civilization gradually shifted north to the Yucatan Peninsula. Here, in the post-classic period, new centers emerged, such as Chichen Itza and Mayapan. Although these cities retained many ancestral traditions, they were already distinct from the majestic metropolises of the classic period. Art became more militaristic, architecture acquired new features, and the political structure changed. The Maya did not disappear. Their culture transformed, adapting to new conditions. But the golden age, the heyday of the great city-states, was irrevocably lost, leaving behind only mysterious ruins and a multitude of unanswered questions. Now that we've seen how the light of the great Mayan cities gradually faded, let's move on to another part of Mesoamerica, where a new, powerful tribe was emerging onto the stage of history. This is the story of the Aztecs, a people whose rise from humble nomadic groups to the creation of a vast empire is astonishing in its speed and scale. Around the beginning of the 13th century, a people known as the Nahua, later known as the Aztecs, emerged in the Valley of Mexico, among numerous small tribes and nascent cities. Coming from the north, from the mythical land of Aztlan, their story is one of tenacity, adaptation, and ultimately dominance. Initially, they served as mercenaries and allies of more powerful peoples, such as the Tepanecs who inhabited the valley. The Aztecs were known for their militancy and resilience, which enabled them to navigate the complex political landscape of the time. The central element of their early history is the legendary founding of their capital. According to legend, their god Huitzilopochtli showed them the location for their settlement, where an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a snake. After long wanderings, around 1320, they discovered this sign on an island in Lake Texcoco. Thus was Tenochtitlan, the future capital of the empire, founded. It was a truly remarkable undertaking. The lake might not seem like the most favorable location for a city, but the Aztecs turned it to their advantage. They began creating artificial islands called chinampas by piling up silt and vegetation. These fertile plots of land became the foundation of their agriculture, allowing them to grow corn, beans, squash, and other crops with incredible efficiency. The first decades of Tenochtitlan's existence were a period of struggle for survival and assertion. The Aztecs lived under the rule of the Tepanecs, paying them tribute and obeying their orders. However, their warrior spirit and organizational skills gradually grew. A significant moment was the emergence of the first dynasty of rulers. The first true ruler, or Tlatoani, is considered to be Acamapictli, who began his reign around 1375. He was not simply a leader, but rather the founder of a dynasty that would rule the Aztecs for many generations. Early Aztec society was organized along clan lines. The basic social unit was the Calpulli, a group of related families who jointly owned land and shared responsibilities. Each Calpulli had its own leader and was responsible for specific crafts or military units. This created a solid foundation for social and economic organization, as well as for the mobilization of forces when needed. The daily lives of the Aztecs, even in this early period, were closely tied to their religion and belief in divine destiny. They revered numerous gods, each responsible for various aspects of nature and human life. Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, held a special place, as he was believed to guide them to success. Other important deities included Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility, and Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent associated with wisdom and wind. By the early 15th century, the Aztecs had accumulated enough power and influence to challenge their former overlords. A key moment came during the reign of Itzcoatl, who became Tlatoani around 1427. It was during his reign that an event occurred that completely changed the course of Aztec history: a rebellion against the Tepanec rulers of Azcapotzalco. Under the leadership of Itzcoatl and his brilliant advisor Tlacael, the Aztecs were able to form an alliance with other disaffected cities, such as Texcoco and Tlacopan. In 1428, this alliance achieved a decisive victory over the Tepanecs. This event marked the founding of the Aztec Empire. Tenochtitlan, previously a subjugated city, became the center of a new dominant power in the Valley of Mexico. This victory allowed the Aztecs not only to free themselves from tribute, but also to begin collecting it from conquered peoples. This was the moment when the Aztecs began to transform from a relatively modest tribe into a formidable empire, whose influence would soon extend over vast territories. Their history, which had begun with a legendary journey, now entered a new, grandiose phase. So, we find ourselves in the heart of the nascent Aztec Empire, in the city that became its pulsating center, Tenochtitlan. After defeating the Tepanecs, the Aztecs, led by the wise Itzcoatl and his advisor Tlacaelel, began building not just a capital, but a symbol of their new power. Tenochtitlan, founded, according to legend, on a site designated by their god Huitzilopochtli, was a truly unique city. It sprawled in the middle of the vast Lake Texcoco, on several islands connected by wide causeways. It was an engineering marvel of its time. Imagine a city where, instead of streets, there were canals along which boats navigated, transporting goods and people. Houses built of clay and stone often had flat roofs on which vegetables and flowers were grown.
The city was divided into 4 large quarters, and these in turn into smaller neighborhoods called calpuli. Each calpuli had its own self-government, its own land, and its own temple. At the center of the city stood the great Tenochtitlan, a massive temple complex housing the main temple dedicated to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. This complex was the site of the most important religious ceremonies and rituals.
The Aztec social structure was quite rigid, but it also offered opportunities for upward mobility. At the head of society stood the Tlatoani, a ruler who served not only as a political leader, but also as a high priest. His power was considerable, but he consulted with a council of noble elders. Below him were the nobility, including military leaders, priests, and high officials. They owned land and held important positions in government. Next came the merchants, known as kidneys, and artisans. The kidneys played a vital role in the economy, traveling throughout the empire and beyond, acquiring rare goods and information. They had their own guilds and enjoyed certain privileges. The majority of the population were farmers and laborers. They cultivated the land, built houses and temples, and served in the army. At the bottom of the social ladder were slaves, who, however, enjoyed more rights than slaves in other cultures. For example, slaves could own property and even buy their freedom. The empire's economy was based on agriculture and trade. Farming was highly developed. The Aztecs used a complex irrigation system and created artificial islands called chinampas, where they grew corn, beans, pumpkins, chili peppers, and other crops. The chinampas were incredibly fertile, allowing for several harvests per year. Trade was brisk. A wide variety of goods could be found daily in the markets of Tenochtitlan and other cities, from food and clothing to precious stones and exotic bird feathers. Cocoa beans and pieces of cloth called mantles served as currency. The entire empire was connected by a network of roads used by traders and messengers. The Aztec military was one of the most powerful in Mesoamerica. Warfare was an integral part of their culture and religion. Military service was considered an honorable duty for every man. The Aztec army consisted of professional warriors trained from a young age. Various military orders existed, such as the Order of the Eagle and the Order of the Jaguar, which recruited the most valiant warriors. The primary goal of war was not so much the conquest of territory as the capture of captives for religious sacrifice. Aztec weapons included spears, javelins, obsidian-tipped clubs, and bows and arrows. Warriors wore protective armor made of impregnated cotton cloth and helmets adorned with feathers. Military success allowed the Aztecs to expand their empire, collect tribute from conquered peoples, and strengthen their influence. Everyday life in Tenochtitlan was eventful. Mornings began early. People went to work, and children went to school, where they were taught the basics of crafts, history, and religion. Women tended to the household, preparing food and weaving clothing. Hygiene was especially important. The city had public baths, and residents washed regularly. The food was varied. The staple of the diet was corn, which was used to make flatbreads, tortillas, and porridge.
Beans, pumpkin, chili, and avocado were also eaten. Meat was not available to everyone, but poultry, fish, and game were also present. In the evening, families gathered, sharing news and telling stories. The city lived to the rhythm of religious festivals, which were celebrated on a grand scale. These festivals were not only religious, but also social events, bringing people together. Religion occupied a central place in Aztec life, permeating every aspect of their existence, from the construction of cities to everyday rituals. For them, the world was filled with divine powers that demanded constant attention and respect. The Aztec pantheon of gods was vast and complex, each god responsible for specific aspects of nature, life, and destiny. Ometeotl, the creator god who gave birth to all other deities, was considered the most important of the gods. He was often represented as a dual being, both male and female, symbolizing unity and harmony. Next came Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, patron of the city of Tenochtitlan, and the primary object of Aztec veneration. His worship was linked to the need to maintain the sun on its daily journey across the sky, which required special energy. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was the god of wind, wisdom, the morning star, and knowledge. He played an important role in mythology, often portrayed as a culture hero who brought civilization to humans. Tlaloc, the god of rain, water, and fertility, was vital to agrarian society, and his favor ensured harvests. Xipe Totec, our Lord clothed in skin, was the god of spring renewal, agriculture, and crafts. His cult included the ritual flaying of skins, symbolizing the renewal of life. The Aztecs believed that the gods needed nourishment to continue their functions. This nourishment, they believed, came from human life force. This is why human sacrifice became an integral part of Aztec religious practice. It wasn't an act of cruelty for the sake of cruelty, but rather a complex ritual designed to maintain cosmic order and ensure the well-being of society. Sacrifices were performed on specific days, linked to calendar cycles, and were aimed at appeasing the gods. Most often, victims were prisoners of war, captured during the numerous wars. Warriors who demonstrated exceptional valor could earn the honor of sacrificing a prisoner, thereby increasing their social status. However, sacrifices could also be performed by volunteers, especially during times of crisis or for particularly important rites. The rituals were meticulously regulated. The victim was raised to the top of the pyramid temple, where a priest performed the rite. There were different methods of sacrifice, depending on the god dedicated to them. For Huitzilopochtli, for example, an obsidian knife was often used to remove the heart. For Tlaloc, however, rituals involved drowning or beheading. The ceremonies were accompanied by music, dancing, and chanting. Priests dressed in special robes played a key role in conducting these rituals. The entire process was imbued with profound religious meaning, aimed at maintaining balance between the human world and the world of the gods. The Aztecs believed that without these rituals, the sun would go out, the world would plunge into darkness, and life would cease. Besides human sacrifice, there were other forms of offerings to the gods. These could include precious stones, feathers from exotic birds, food, drink, and even blood collected through self-mutilation, when priests or nobles pierced their ears, tongues, or other body parts. These self-mutilation rituals were also a way to demonstrate devotion to the gods and receive their blessings. Religious festivals were frequent and vibrant events in Tenochtitlan. Each month of the Aztec calendar was dedicated to specific gods and accompanied by corresponding ceremonies. These festivals united the city's inhabitants, allowing them to feel part of something greater, connected to the divine world. Life in Tenochtitlan, though filled with work and care, was a constant reminder of the presence of the gods and the need to maintain harmonious relations with them. This deep religiosity, on the one hand, served as a powerful unifying factor for Aztec society, and on the other, it laid the foundation for its future trials. Understanding the role of religion and ritual helps us gain a deeper understanding of the Aztecs' motives and actions, as well as understand how their beliefs influenced their interactions with the outside world and other peoples. The arrival of Europeans in Aztec lands marked the beginning of one of the most dramatic periods in the history of this civilization. It was a time when two completely different cultures collided, each with its own worldview, technologies, and beliefs. It all began in 1519, when an expedition led by Hernando Cortés arrived from Cuba. Driven by a thirst for gold, glory, and a desire to spread Christianity, the Spaniards set foot on the Yucatan Peninsula and then began their advance inland. The Aztecs, whose empire had reached its peak, generally greeted the foreigners with caution, but also with some curiosity. They believed in prophecies of the return of the deities, and some Aztec leaders, including the supreme ruler Moctezuma II, initially did not perceive the Spaniards as a direct threat. They viewed them more as exotic visitors, perhaps messengers of the gods, or important traders. Cortés, for his part, was a skilled politician and strategist. He quickly realized that the Aztec Empire, despite its might, was not a single monolithic entity. Many conquered peoples resented the rule of Tenochtitlan and were ready to support anyone who could free them from Aztec oppression. The Spaniards, armed with firearms, steel swords, and armor, as well as war horses the locals had never seen before, had a clear military advantage. However, their numbers were negligible compared to the Aztec army. The key to the conquest was Cortés's ability to exploit the internal contradictions within Aztec society. He found allies among peoples who were enemies of the Aztecs, such as the Totonacs and Tlaxcalans. These tribes provided the Spaniards with thousands of warriors, food, and knowledge of the terrain. The Spaniards' journey to Tenochtitlan was long and arduous. They crossed mountains, jungles, and rivers. Along the way, they encountered various tribes, some of whom resisted, while others joined their army. Every city the Spaniards passed through witnessed either the cruelty or the diplomatic skill of Cortés. He knew how to persuade, intimidate, and forge alliances, always striving for his primary goal, the capture of the capital. In 1519, Cortés and his army, which by then numbered several thousand Spaniards and tens of thousands of Native American allies, approached Tenochtitlan. The city, built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, amazed them with its grandeur. Moctezuma II, the supreme ruler, came out to greet the Spaniards. This was not a simple greeting, but rather an attempt to understand and control the situation. Cortés, in turn, took this opportunity to enter the city as a guest, but with the clear intention of establishing his dominance. Initially, relations between the Spaniards and the Aztecs were tense but outwardly peaceful. The Spaniards were housed in one of the city's palaces and allowed to explore it. However, Cortés was not idle. He collected information on the Aztec political system, economy, and religion, as well as their military strength. One day, taking advantage of the Moctezuma's absence, the Spaniards arrested him, accusing him of conspiracy. This proved a turning point. The Aztecs were shocked by such treachery, but with their emperor in enemy hands, they were unable to openly rebel. Under pressure from the Spaniards, Moctezuma ordered his subjects to obey Cortés. However, the situation escalated. While Cortés was away, heading to the coast to combat another Spanish expedition, his lieutenant Pedro de Alvarado carried out a massacre during a religious festival. This sparked a massive Aztec uprising. When Cortés returned, he found the city in flames and his men under siege. Moctezuma, attempting to calm his people, was killed. The exact circumstances of his death remain a matter of debate. Some say he was murdered by the Spaniards, others that he was stoned by his own subjects, outraged by his collaboration with the foreigners. After Moctezuma's death, Cuitlahuac was elected as the new ruler. The Aztecs finally fought back. On the night of June 21, 1520, known as the Night of Sorrows, La Noche Triste, the Aztecs attacked the Spaniards and their allies as they attempted to flee the city. The Spaniards suffered heavy losses, losing most of their treasure, weapons, and horses. Cortés and a few survivors managed to escape. However, this defeat did not break Cortés. He gathered new forces, enlisted new allies among the indigenous tribes, and began preparations for a new siege of Tenochtitlan. This time, he employed new tactics. The Spaniards built brigantines, small ships that allowed them to control the lake and blockade the city. The siege of Tenochtitlan began in May 1521 and lasted approximately 3 months. The city, cut off from supplies, suffered from hunger and disease. The Spaniards and their allies methodically destroyed the city, block by block. The struggle was fierce. The Aztecs fought with incredible courage, defending their home and their culture. But the odds were uneven. Ultimately, on August 30, 1521, the last Aztec emperor, Cuauhtémoc, was captured, and Tenochtitlan fell. The conquest of the Aztec Empire, which lasted just 2 years, marked the end of one great civilization and the beginning of a new era in Mesoamerican history. The empire's decline was swift, but it was not the result of military defeat alone. Diseases introduced by Europeans, such as smallpox, to which the native population had no immunity, claimed millions of lives, devastating towns and villages long before the Spanish could even see them. This became a silent but no less devastating factor in the fall of the Aztec world. Let's now move to the majestic Andes, where, far from the tropical forests of Mesoamerica, another great civilization arose, the Inca Empire. Its history began modestly, with a small kingdom located in the Cusco Valley. This valley, with its fertile lands and protected location, became the cradle of a future powerful state. Imagine this valley around 1200 AD. Here lived the people who would eventually become known as the Incas. They weren't the only people in this region, but they possessed a unique organization and ambition. The first rulers we know from legends and historical records, such as Manco Capac, laid the foundations of the future kingdom. These were formative times when the Incas, like many other peoples, were learning to live in harmony with the harsh yet fertile nature of the Andes. Everyday life in the Cusco Valley was closely tied to agriculture. The Incas grew corn, potatoes, and quinoa, crops perfectly adapted to the high-altitude climate. They built terraces on the mountain slopes to maximize the use of every inch of land, creating agricultural lands of remarkable ingenuity. Water for irrigation was supplied through complex, skillfully constructed canals. People lived in simple but sturdy houses made of stone or clay, organized into communities. Agriculture was the main occupation, along with crafts such as weaving, ceramics, and metalworking. Until about the mid-15th century, the Incas lived relatively peacefully, gradually expanding their influence in the Cusco Valley. They did not seek large-scale conquests, but strengthened their position by forming alliances and subjugating neighboring small tribes. Their culture and religion, which gradually developed and spread, played a significant role in this process. But everything changed during the reign of Inca Pachacuti, who came to power around 1438. He is considered a great reformer and conqueror who transformed the modest Inca kingdom into a vast empire. Pachacuti launched an aggressive expansion, using a powerful army and skillful diplomacy. He understood that governing such a vast territory required new structures and organization. Under Pachacuti, construction began on a new capital, Cusco, which he transformed into a magnificent city. It was not just an administrative center, but also a sacred place, the center of the empire. The city was rebuilt, adorned with temples, palaces, and residential areas. The Incas believed their capital was the center of the world and strove to give it an appearance accordingly. During this period, the foundations of the imperial structure that would later astound Europeans were laid. The Incas developed a system of governance that allowed them to control vast territories and diverse populations. A key element of this system was road construction. The Inca road network, stretching for thousands of kilometers, connected the most remote corners of the empire. These roads were not mere paths, but true engineering feats, with bridges, tunnels, and rest areas for travelers. They enabled the rapid movement of troops, tax collection, and information exchange. The empire's economy was built on the principles of centralized distribution. Land was considered state property and was cultivated by communities. Agricultural products and handicrafts were all collected in state warehouses and then distributed according to needs. The mita system, which we will discuss in more detail later, allowed for the mobilization of the population for public works, the construction of roads, temples, and terraces, as well as for military service. The Inca religion was polytheistic,
with a strong sun cult. The god Inti was considered the primary deity, the father of all Incas. The sun was the source of life, warmth, and light, and its worship permeated all aspects of Inca life. Also venerated were the creator god Viracocha, the earth goddess Pachamama, and many other deities associated with nature and the elements. Priests played an important role in society, serving in temples, conducting rituals, and observing celestial phenomena. During this period, which can be called the birth of the empire, the Incas had not yet reached the peak of their power. But it was then, under the leadership of rulers such as Pachacuti, that the foundations were laid that would later enable them to create one of the most impressive states of pre-Columbian America. This was a time of gradual growth, accumulation of power, and the formation of the unique culture that made the Incas one of the greatest civilizations in history. The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, which means 4 united provinces in Quechua, reached its peak between the mid-15th and early 16th centuries. It was a time of incredible construction, effective governance, and the profound integration of vast territories. The heart of this empire, as we've already mentioned, was the city of Cusco, located high in the Andes. But it was precisely during this period that many astonishing structures were built that still inspire admiration today. One of the most striking examples of Inca engineering genius is the road system. Known as the Capac Ñan, or Royal Road, this network stretched over 40,000 kilometers. It connected the most remote corners of the empire, from the equatorial forests in the north to the arid coastal regions in the south. The roads were meticulously planned and constructed. They passed through mountains, crossed gorges, and even swampy areas. To overcome mountain passes, the Incas built stepped roads, and to cross rivers, suspension bridges made of vines. Capable of withstanding significant loads, these bridges were true marvels of engineering. Roads served not only for the movement of troops and officials, but also for the rapid transmission of information. Messengers called chasquis traveled along them. These young men were trained to run and knew the routes by heart. They could cover great distances in a short time, transmitting messages using a knotted writing system called quipus. Quipus were complex systems of multicolored cords with knots, each with its own meaning. Thus, information could spread throughout the empire with astonishing speed, allowing the central government to respond promptly to events. Everyday life in the empire was built around this developed infrastructure. Peasants living in mountain villages or fertile valleys supplied food for the army and state needs. Artisans created ceramics, textiles, and metalwork. All of this was accumulated in state storehouses and distributed according to need. The mita system, mentioned earlier, played a key role in maintaining this system. Every adult male was required to work a certain number of days per year on public works. This could include building roads, temples, agricultural terraces, or working in mines. This system made it possible to mobilize vast labor resources for the completion of large-scale projects. Inca architecture is striking in its monumentality and harmony with nature. Their structures were constructed from enormous stone blocks, perfectly fitted together without mortar.
Their stone cutting techniques were so sophisticated that not even a knife blade could fit between the blocks. This ensured the building's durability and resistance to earthquakes, which are common in the Andes. The most famous Inca architectural masterpiece is undoubtedly Machu Picchu. This lost city, nestled high in the mountains, was built in the mid-15th century, likely as a summer residence for Emperor Pachacuti. Machu Picchu is not just a collection of buildings, but an entire city integrated into the mountain landscape. It contains residential buildings, temples, agricultural terraces, and complex water supply systems. The city was designed to maximize the natural features of the site while maintaining its functionality and aesthetic appeal. Another important aspect of life in the Inca Empire was governance. The empire was divided into 4 provinces, each ruled by a viceroy, reporting directly to the emperor. The emperor, or Sapa Inca, was considered the son of the sun god Inti and wielded absolute power. The administrative system was strictly hierarchical and centralized. Officials oversaw tax collection, resource distribution, and law enforcement. The Inca religion, as already mentioned, was closely linked to nature and astronomical phenomena. The sun, Inti, occupied a central place in their pantheon. Priests performed complex rituals to appease the gods and ensure the well-being of the empire. They observed the movements of the stars and planets, predicting the future and determining auspicious days for important events. Daily life in the Inca Empire, although subject to strict rules, was relatively stable. Peasants farmed, growing corn, potatoes, and other crops. Families lived in communities where mutual aid and solidarity reigned. Children learned crafts and agricultural skills from their parents. Art and music also played an important role in Inca life. They created beautiful fabrics, jewelry, and musical instruments. During the heyday of the Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu was a highly organized and prosperous state. Its achievements in construction, engineering, governance, and social organization were truly remarkable. This civilization left behind a rich legacy that continues to inspire and amaze us to this day. The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, was a remarkable example of an organized society, where every element interacted harmoniously with the others. We've already mentioned the strict hierarchy of power and centralized governance, but behind these frameworks lay a complex system that permeated all spheres of life. Inca society was strictly stratified. At the top stood the Sapa Inca, the divine ruler, followed by his family, nobles, and priests. Below him were officials, military leaders, and then artisans and farmers. The majority of the population consisted of simple community members who lived and worked within their villages and regions. The empire's economy was based on agriculture and collective labor. The Incas were skilled farmers, mastering terraced farming and complex irrigation systems. The main crops were corn, potatoes, quinoa, and beans. The land belonged to the communities, and the harvest was shared among families, the state, and the temples. One of the most unique features of the Inca economy was the mita system.
This was a form of compulsory labor service, whereby men between the ages of 15 and 50 were required to work for the state for a certain number of days each year. This work could include building roads, bridges, temples, mining, or serving in the army. Mita wasn't slavery. It was a form of public debt that ensured the functioning and development of the entire empire. The state, in turn, provided the workers with food, clothing, and housing. The Mita system allowed the Incas to construct grandiose structures, such as the famous roads that connected the most remote corners of the empire. These roads, built with astonishing precision and craftsmanship, allowed for the rapid movement of troops, officials, and goods. Inns were located along the roads where travelers could rest and obtain food. The empire was governed through a complex network of officials. Each region was divided into smaller units, governed by specially appointed officials. They were responsible for collecting taxes, distributing resources, resolving disputes, and maintaining order. To record and communicate information, the Incas used a knotted writing system called quipu. These were strings of varying lengths and colors, tied with knots. Each knot, its position and type, conveyed specific information. Quipu were used to record statistics, historical events, and even to convey messages. Religion played a central role in Inca life. They revered numerous gods associated with nature and the cosmos. The primary deity was Inti, the sun god, from whom the Sapa Inca himself was believed to have descended. Other important gods included Viracocha, the creator god, and Pachamama, the earth goddess. Religious rituals and festivals accompanied all important events in the life of the empire, from sowing and harvesting to the birth of children and the accession of a new ruler. Priests played a vital role in society, conducting ceremonies, observing the celestial bodies, and advising rulers. The daily lives of most Incas revolved around agriculture and communal living. Families lived in small houses built of stone or clay. They shared labor and resources, supporting each other. Children learned farming skills, crafts, and traditions from their parents from an early age. Despite the strict organization of their lives, there was also room for art. They created beautiful textiles, ceramics, jewelry, and musical instruments. Their music, often played on flutes and drums, accompanied both daily life and religious ceremonies. At its height, Tawantinsuyu was not just an empire, but a complex and self-sufficient organism. Its social structure, Mita-based economic system, and sophisticated governance enabled it to achieve heights that continue to inspire admiration. This civilization, though vanished, left behind a magnificent legacy that testifies to the power of the human spirit and the capacity for organization. The history of the Inca Empire, so carefully constructed over centuries, has approached its dramatic conclusion. This decline was not a sudden collapse, but rather a complex process intertwined with internal contradictions and external forces. We will continue our journey into the past to understand how the great civilization of Tawantinsuyu faced inevitable change. Around the beginning of the 16th century, when the Inca Empire reached its peak power, serious problems began to brew within it. One of the most devastating factors was civil war. It erupted after the death of the great Sapa Inca Huayna Capac, who reigned from the late 15th to the early 16th centuries. Huayna Capac left no clear successor, leading to a power struggle among his sons. The main contenders for the throne were Atahualpa and Huáscar. Atahualpa, who was stationed in the north of the empire, in Quito, had gathered significant forces around him. Huáscar, based in the capital, Cusco, also had his supporters. A bloody war broke out, weakening the empire and depleting its resources. The brothers fought each other, threatening the unity of Tawantinsuyu. This civil war lasted for several years, from approximately 1527 to 1532. Ultimately, Atahualpa emerged victorious, capturing his brother Huáscar. However, this victory was bittersweet, as the empire was deeply divided. It was during this period of weakness and fragmentation that the first Europeans appeared on the shores of South America. Expeditions, financed by the Spanish crown, explored the new lands in search of riches and glory. One such explorer was Francisco Pizarro. Along with his brothers, Hernando, Gonzalo, and Juan, and a small group of soldiers, Pizarro set out on his third and final voyage in 1532. Pizarro and his men landed in what is now Peru. They were amazed by the empire's scale, organization, and wealth. However, they also noticed internal instability caused by civil war. Pizarro, an experienced conquistador, saw this as an opportunity. He decided to exploit the discord among the Incas to his own advantage. The meeting between Francisco Pizarro and Atahualpa took place in the city of Cajamarca. It occurred in November 1532. Atahualpa, fresh from defeating his brother, arrived in Cajamarca with a large number of his warriors, but unarmed, as a sign of peaceful intentions. The Spaniards, led by Pizarro, had prepared an ambush. When Atahualpa entered the city square, the Spanish priest Vicente de Valverde presented him with a Bible and demanded that he convert to Christianity and acknowledge the authority of the Spanish king. Atahualpa, not understanding the book's meaning and unwilling to submit to a foreigner, threw the Bible to the ground. This became a pretext for an attack. The Spaniards, using their superior weaponry, steel swords, pistols, and horses the Incas had never seen before, attacked the emperor's defenseless retinue. Events in Cajamarca were swift and brutal. Thousands of Inca warriors were killed, and Atahualpa himself was captured. Despite being a ruler, Atahualpa found himself trapped, surrounded by people who saw him only as a pagan and a source of wealth. While in captivity, Atahualpa attempted to negotiate with Pizarro. He offered a vast amount of gold and silver in exchange for his freedom. The emperor promised to fill the room in which he was held with gold to the height he could reach, and twice as much with silver. The Spaniards, amazed by the scale of the offer, agreed. For several months, the Incas collected precious metals from across the empire, bringing them to Cajamarca. Gold and silver flowed in from every corner of Tawantinsuyu, testament to the wealth and skill of the Incas. However, despite fulfilling the conditions, Francisco Pizarro had no intention of releasing Atahualpa. The Spaniards feared that if the emperor were released, he would gather an army and destroy them. In 1533, after a brief and unfair trial, Atahualpa was accused of various crimes, including idolatry and the murder of his brother Huascar. He was sentenced to death. Ironically, to avoid being burned at the stake, which would have meant eternal oblivion from the Inca faith, Atahualpa agreed to be baptized. He was baptized under the name Juan and then executed by strangulation. Atahualpa's death was a turning point. Although the Incas continued to resist, the empire was deprived of its central leadership. The Spanish, exploiting the Incas' weakness and internal conflicts, began a systematic conquest. Pizarro and his conquistadors advanced deep into the empire, capturing cities and subjugating local tribes who were often dissatisfied with Inca rule. The Inca resistance continued for several more decades. After Atahualpa's death, the Incas elected a new ruler, Manco Inca Yupanqui, who initially collaborated with the Spanish. However, when he realized the conquistadors' true intentions, he rebelled. In 1536, Manco Inca besieged Cusco, but the Spanish, with superior weapons and tactics, were able to repel the attack. Manco Inca Yupanqui was forced to retreat to the mountains, where he founded an independent Inca state in Vilcabamba. This was the last Inca stronghold, which lasted nearly 40 years. From there, the Incas continued to resist the Spanish, launching raids and maintaining a spirit of independence. The daily lives of most Incas under Spanish rule changed dramatically. The traditional mita system, which provided labor for the empire, was reoriented toward mining precious metals for the Spanish. The Incas, accustomed to collective labor and community care, faced exploitation and violence. Many were forced to work in dangerous conditions in the mines, where the mortality rate was very high. The spread of European diseases such as smallpox and measles, to which the Incas had no immunity, also played a devastating role. Epidemics claimed the lives of millions, weakening resistance and destroying the social fabric. The last Inca, Tupac Amaru, was captured by the Spanish and executed in 1572. This event is considered the final fall of the Inca Empire. After his death, Vilcabamba was captured, and the last pockets of organized resistance were suppressed. The conquest of the Inca Empire was a complex and multifaceted process. It was not limited to military clashes alone. The Spanish exploited political divisions, religious differences, and technological superiority. Francisco Pizarro played a key role in this process. His determination, cunning, and cruelty enabled him to overthrow the mighty empire. The fall of the Inca Empire was a tragic event for millions of people, who lost their independence, culture, and way of life. However, despite the destruction, the Inca legacy did not disappear completely. Their architectural structures, such as Machu Picchu, their agricultural terraces, and their organizational principles continue to inspire and awe. The story of the Inca Empire reminds us of the fragility of power and how internal conflicts can open the door to foreign conquerors. This chapter in South American history offers an important lesson in the complexity of human civilizations and their interactions.
The history of the ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica and the Andes is a fascinating journey through the ages, full of mysteries, great achievements, and lessons that remain relevant today. We've delved into the world of the Maya, their rise and decline, explored the power of the Aztecs and their capital, Tenochtitlan, and marveled at the organization and architecture of the Inca Empire. Now that we've explored the major milestones of their development, it's time to pause and look at these civilizations as a whole. It's time to compare them, discover their similarities and differences, and better understand their unique contributions to the treasure trove of world history. Let's start with what they have in common. All three civilizations, the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, emerged and developed in isolated regions, yet they demonstrated striking similarities in some aspects of their existence. All three built complex societies, achieved significant advances in agriculture, developed their own belief systems, and demonstrated outstanding construction skills. The Maya, for example, reached the peak of their development during the Classic period, from approximately 250 to 900 AD. During this time, their cities, such as Tikal, Palenque, and Copan, were centers of political, religious, and cultural life. The Maya were skilled astronomers and mathematicians, developed a complex and precise calendar system, and created one of the most advanced writing systems in pre-Columbian America, hieroglyphic writing. Their cities were adorned with magnificent temples, palaces, and observatories, constructed with astonishing precision and skill. The Aztecs, who appeared on the historical stage somewhat later, by the beginning of the 15th century CE, created a vast empire centered on the legendary Tenochtitlan. This city, built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, amazed contemporaries with its scale, canals, bridges, and majestic temples. The Aztecs were skilled warriors and administrators, managing to unite numerous peoples under their rule. Their social structure was clearly organized, and their economy was based on agriculture, crafts, and trade. The Incas, in turn, created the most extensive empire in South America, Tawantinsuyu. Their state stretched along the Andes and was distinguished by its remarkable organization. The Incas were renowned for their road network, which connected the most remote corners of the empire, as well as for their grandiose construction projects, including the famous Machu Picchu. Their social system was based on collectivism and strict governance, and religion played a central role in society. Now let's delve into the differences. One of the most noticeable is their writing system. The Maya, as we've already mentioned, developed a fully developed hieroglyphic system that allowed them to record history, mythology, and scientific knowledge. The Aztecs used a simpler pictographic system, which was more suited to recording dates, names, and events than to conveying complex ideas. The Incas, however, had no writing system as we know it. Instead, they used a knotted system called quipu, which consisted of strings with knots of varying colors and sizes. Quipu was used for accounting, statistics, and information transfer, but it didn't allow for the recording of texts in the manner of the Maya. Another important difference concerns political organization. The Inca Empire was a centralized state, ruled by a supreme ruler, the Sapa Inca, who wielded absolute power.
The Aztecs also had a centralized power, but their empire was more of a confederation, where conquered peoples retained a certain autonomy, but paid tribute and supplied warriors. The Mayan civilization, by contrast, never formed a unified empire.
Their city-states were independent, often at odds with one another, despite sharing a common culture and language. Religious practices also showed differences. All three civilizations were polytheistic, venerating multiple gods associated with nature, the cosmos, and human life. However, the scale and nature of rituals could vary greatly. The Aztecs are known for their human sacrifices, which, according to their beliefs, were necessary to maintain order in the universe and appease the gods. The Maya also practiced human sacrifice, but according to many researchers, it was less common and of a different nature, often associated with the rituals of the ruling elite. Among the Incas, human sacrifices were even rarer and were typically reserved for the most important events, such as the death of a ruler or natural disasters. As for everyday life, here too, commonalities and differences can be found. Farmers formed the foundation of society in all three cultures. They tilled the land, growing corn, beans, squash, and other crops that formed the basis of their diet. The Mayans, for example, used slash-and-burn agriculture and developed complex irrigation systems. The Aztecs were famous for their chinampas, artificial floating gardens that allowed them to grow abundant crops even in limited space. The Incas, who lived in the highlands, developed unique terraced farming systems that allowed them to develop mountain slopes and use water efficiently. Cities and settlements also differed. Classic Mayan cities were majestic ceremonial centers with pyramids, temples, and palaces, surrounded by more modest residential areas. The Aztec city of Tenochtitlan was a unique city built on water, with a developed system of canals and bridges. Inca settlements, whether the majestic Machu Picchu or simpler villages, were distinguished by their strict planning and the use of stone in construction. Interesting details of everyday life reveal their crafts and art. The Mayans were skilled potters, jewelers, and stone carvers. Their ceramics and sculptures are distinguished by their fine craftsmanship and rich detail. The Aztecs were also skilled artisans, particularly in gold, silver, and feather work. Their works of art often carried religious and symbolic meaning. The Incas, meanwhile, were renowned for their mastery of stonework, textiles, and metalwork. Their textiles, for example, were distinguished by their high quality and intricate designs. Now, let's turn to their contributions to world history. Each of these civilizations left an indelible mark, enriching the world with unique knowledge and achievements. The Maya gave us not only an impressive writing system and a precise calendar, but also a profound understanding of astronomy and mathematics. Their understanding of the cycles of time and the movement of celestial bodies was astounding for their time. Their architectural structures continue to inspire and awe with their monumentality and beauty. The Aztecs, despite their relatively short history as an empire, demonstrated remarkable organizational skills and created a city that still captivates the imagination. Their agricultural achievements, especially the creation of chinampas, exemplify engineering and adaptation to the environment.
The Incas left us an example of incredible state organization and construction. Their road network, which stretched for thousands of kilometers, their terraced agriculture, and their ability to build magnificent structures in the most inaccessible places, all testify to their genius. Machu Picchu, a symbol of their architectural mastery, continues to attract people from all over the world. It's important to note that these civilizations, although conquered, did not vanish without a trace. Their culture, language, traditions, and knowledge live on in the descendants of the indigenous peoples inhabiting these regions. Archaeological finds and surviving monuments allow us to touch their past and understand the depth of their civilizations. Comparing these three great cultures, we see that despite their geographical distance and distinct differences, they are united by a desire for order, development, and understanding of the world around them. They created complex societies, leaving behind a rich legacy that continues to amaze and inspire us. Their history is a story of human ingenuity, resilience, and the pursuit of greatness. Studying these forgotten empires teaches us valuable lessons. We see the importance of preserving and developing knowledge, how great achievements can be achieved through organization and cooperation, and how fragile even the most powerful state can be in the face of internal conflicts and external threats. These civilizations remind us of the diversity of human experience and that history is full of wondrous discoveries if we are willing to listen to its quiet but wise voice. Their legacy is not simply the stones of ancient ruins or the patterns on pottery. It is part of a shared human history that helps us better understand ourselves and our place in the world. And so, having delved into the depths of time, we conclude our journey through the enigmatic civilizations of Mesoamerica and the Andes. We've come a long way, exploring the birth and rise of mighty cultures whose achievements still inspire awe. From the first Mayan settlements, which gradually took the form of majestic city-states, to their golden age when Tikal, Palenque, and Copan shone as centers of knowledge and art. We've seen how the Maya mastered the celestial bodies, creating precise calendars and developing a unique writing system that now reveals their wisdom. Our gaze then turned to the Aztecs, their rapid rise from nomadic tribes to the creation of a vast empire centered in magnificent Tenochtitlan. We learned about their complex social structure, the strength of their military organization, and their profound spirituality, imbued with a complex pantheon of gods and rituals. And, of course, we explored the majestic Inca kingdom, nestled in the heart of the Andes. From humble beginnings to the rise of the Tawantinsuyu Empire, crisscrossed with a network of roads and adorned with masterpieces like Machu Picchu. We saw how the Incas governed their people, how they developed their economy, and how their beliefs shaped their daily lives. All these civilizations, each in their own way, left an indelible mark on human history. Although their eras have ended and their empires have fallen to new powers, their legacy lives on. It lives on in the descendants of their indigenous peoples, in their languages, traditions, and worldviews. It is embodied in the stones of ancient temples and pyramids, in the intricate designs of ceramics,
and in mysterious inscriptions that we continue to decipher. Comparing the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, we see not only differences dictated by geography and history, but also striking similarities. They all strove for order, to understand the laws of nature and the cosmos, and to create complex social structures capable of supporting life and development. They demonstrated incredible ingenuity, tenacity, and organizational skills. Their history is more than just a tale of ancient peoples. It contains lessons we can learn for ourselves.
Lessons about the importance of knowledge and its accumulation, the power of cooperation and organization, and how even the most powerful states can be vulnerable to internal discord and external challenges. These civilizations remind us of the boundless diversity of human experience, and that history is full of discoveries for those willing to listen to its quiet but wise voice. Their legacy is more than just museum exhibits or tourist attractions. It is part of our shared history, helping us better understand ourselves, our past, and our place in this ever-changing world. By studying them, we enrich our understanding of human civilization, its rise and fall, and its eternal quest for knowledge and creation. Thus, with a sense of peace and deep respect, we conclude our exploration.
May the memory of these great cultures be a source of inspiration and a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, its ability to create beauty and order even in the most difficult circumstances. May their stories, told to us through the centuries, bring us peace and quiet wisdom.